Any non-consensual sexual intercourse is a crime, but some survivors of marital or spousal rape still battle to find justice.
Kukho isilonda esihleli esingapholiyo sentokubana mna ndibe lixhoba lodlwengulwa ngumyeni wam kodwa akho nto yenzekayo.
It is estimated that a significant number of women are sexually abused by their husbands, but many fear reporting it due to the unfavorable social and criminal justice system.
The case was laid. The case went on for about a year, and I was getting tired of going to court.
And religious and cultural norms remain the biggest barrier for many spousal rape victims.
It's not something they would go to the police station and report, because again it's a subject that is taboo and it's clouded around shame.
The 45-year-old Nomalizo Zono, a mother of 5, claims she was raped by her husband for 6 years. She recalls him being controlling from the beginning.
Ibingumuntu ongaphangeliyo. So umbona ke ngoku noba ndihamba nezitshomi zam ngoku ufuna imali inkani and uba nomona afuna ba yonke into ngomayicontrolwe nguye.
Nomalizo says she initially broke off the relationship but gave it another chance, a decision she still regrets.
Dathe xa ndibuya wabesithi mna ndinevumba labantu abane-AIDS. Hey man, ngumntu onjani lo? Mna ndingumntu xa ethethe into kum ingangeni kamandi and ke ngontsole ndithule and yabona uba iyanibulala le nto ayenzayo. Benelizwi lokuba undilobole na anytime efuna ulala nam kwaphako kwabiqale phaa hayi ke yayiloo ngxole so iloo nto ayenzayo kum imbi. Ndineentloni zikamamakhe bakaloku silapha kokwabo and this time bedla ngodlala umculo for mama Khangeva. Hayi ke bona uba ndiyakhala like indlela andilala ngayo and ke ngumamakhe uyayiva yonke le nto yenzekayo but ke ngoku akakwazi unqanda.
She works as a cook but says when the abuse started, her life became consumed by fear, which affected her work.
Ke emsebenzini sole ndinexhala into yokubana noba ndenza ntoni noba ingatsha loo mbiza okanye kuthini uba ubethu please call yena funeke ndibe nexhala uba ufuna uqonda ndiphi ndenza ntoni kathi ngoku endazi uba ndisemsebenzini.
She says her husband forced her to perform degrading sexual acts and violently assaulted her. Her children often witnessed the abuse.
Uyamtixela ekamereni thinda siyeva and then ngoku sithi xa sifuna like upusha umnyango like asikwazi kaloku ulokhile yabo ubhizi yambetha and then ngoku xa ifumane loo chance ke ngoku umama avula umnyango abaleke. There was a time athatha into zikamama ibags zakhe i-IDs ne-IDs nento yonke azithathe ahambe nazo aye kumama wakhe fike kumama wakhe afihle ezazinto unxilile. And then ininzi mani into beyenza la bhuti so iyandistressa affectile mna gqithi nabantwana basekhaya. Khona imini umama apha uthi umgxothile and then wafuneka ehlale kwineighbor ezantsi.
Research shows that many women feel too ashamed to report being abused by their husbands. The patriarchal nature of society compounds men's feelings of entitlement over their wives' bodies. Nomalizo says despite the shame, in July 2015, she could no longer take the abuse. She gathered the courage to report him to the police.
Aqhubekeka i-abuse, aqhubekeka sizi-abuse, mane nisiya ecourt. Aniki warrant of arrest aphinda abuye umama akhe ahamba yomkhupha. Ndade ndabuza apha ku-2018 ndipha ecourt ndathi kanti ithini into le warrant arrest kuba kaloku ngoku le nto yenzayo uyenza nalapha ebantwaneni bam uhamba apha endlini ze oko wazalwa uyaqonda and uyabetha apha intombazana kathiwa ke ngoku uzawubanjwa nyhani ke wabanjwa.
She says she was shocked by her husband's constant release, and in 2016 she says she once again pleaded with the Langa police to enforce the protection order.
Ndathi kulo sisi ndicela uncede, ndicela ubuza ithini iprocedure lena ye-warrant of arrest kuba uyabanjwa aphinde aphume aphinde azapha. Ngoku sisi ndifuna ukuxelela into yobana ndiphila kakubi and ndiyi-sex slave yakhe. Sisi sex slave ngumntu oxhatshazwa everyday, ndatsho kweli polisi akho mini 10 emini ebusuku phinini nangeliphi ixesha, like nditsho kweli polisakazi ndathi sisi ndiloo ntlobo mna yilo bubomi bam obo.
This time he was arrested, but special assignment still awaits a response from the National Police on why the protection order was allegedly often not enforced. We approached the NPA to ask why her case is dragging. They are yet to respond.
Kukho isilonda esihleli esingapholiyo sentokubana mna ndibe lixhoba lodlwengulwa ngumyeni wam, kodwa akho nto yenzekayo, akho nto ide ndiyibone iqhubekeka uba nale case ithatha ixesha.
Taking a look at how the youth consume news.
I prefer using social networks for information.
I happen to find reading news on my cell phone more convenient than reading news in newspapers.
I do follow various news sites there, and I get the links to the news articles that I read every single day.
I prefer using the night to watch to get the news because of it's convenient.
Watch Media Monitor Sundays at 9 a.m.
In a patriarchal society, most men believe that they are entitled to have sexual intercourse with their wives, regardless of their consent. Nomalizo Zono says after having suffered repeated marital rape, she decided to speak out about her experience. In 2018, she approached a women's rights organization called Ilita Labantu, which rallied behind her and continued to support her in court.
She was like any other survivor who has been, traumatized and is being, living a harrowing experience, clouded in feelings of shame and thinking that, she's going to be judged for what she's about, to disclose.
Among other issues, the organization deals with many cases of marital rape. They say sexually abused women often do not disclose being raped immediately.
So they would come to report it as that they are suffering domestic violence abuse from their spouse. And then as you begin to interview them, you find out, then they will disclose that there has been marital rape.
The healing process for Nomalizo has been a roller coaster ride.
For survivors of sexual violence, you can never really pinpoint and say this person now is 100%, because it's a daily struggle. So we are still providing counseling for her, but you can tell that in the way that she's eager to tell her story so that she can bring awareness around the subject of marital rape.
As she continues to rebuild her life, she says she is determined to reach the conclusion of her case with the support of Ilita Labantu.
We provide court support for her every time when they have to go to court. We make sure we mobilize members of the community as well as former survivors who who go with us to court to sort of like raise awareness around her case.
At the beginning, it was all roses. When I became pregnant, they wanted me to get married, and I didn't want to get married because during the relationship, in the 7 months that we knew each other, he had this kind of a little bit of slight violent act when you had too much to drink, and I thought that maybe I could go past that in the near future. And yes, he did stop drinking when we got married, but the abuse then started from when I got married to him.
This woman prefers to remain anonymous. She says she also survived marital rape.
We were married then. I stopped sex a few months before that because I wanted to get out of the abusive relationship. So I just stopped sex, and then the morning when I was getting done for work, I got out of the shower and he came into the room and said to me that I'm going nowhere today, that I'm going to see what he does to me today. And at that very moment, it's like you emotionally, mentally prepare yourself for what if this happens, and then you stare that thing in the face when it really does happen, and when you confront with it. And that morning he took my car keys, my phone, everything was switched off. There was no point in me going to fight this big guy. I was just done with the physical abuse. I just couldn't take another blow again. I had this big dude standing in the middle of the doorway of the room. He threw me on the bed, took off my clothes, and started having his way with me, started having sex with me. Unconsented sex, because I continuously asked him not to do this, to please stop and to think about what he's doing. And all the way I cried, there was just no remorse. There was just continuation of pleasing himself. I bothered myself. A friend of mine came to knock at the door because I had to now pretend like everything is normal. Like, because he's got a legal gun, he could shoot me. What about my kids? I had a lot to think about at that time.
She says she managed to leave the house and ask for help, which came immediately, but she too says she was failed by the system.
As I was standing there, we found the police, and they said they would send out the van in the next 5 minutes. I then drove home from there because I had to come back so that everything can be calm, that he doesn't escape. And then 5 minutes later the police came. He stood in the doorway and said he'd done nothing wrong. And I kept on telling the policeman that they need to take his gun and they didn't take his gun that day. They just escorted him off the premises. After them escorting me off the premises and circling the house for a couple of times, I then had somebody else called one of my other friends to take me to the police station and go and lay a charge at the police station. The officer at the police station told me that they did put it in the book, and that wasn't enough for me. I was raped. I was done an injustice, and you can't just put it on a piece of paper and not let it go anywhere.
She says it all took a toll on her health and her family, whose well-being she was most concerned about.
After that, the case was laid. The case went on for about a year, and I was getting tired of going to court and standing there in that same courtroom with the same perpetrator just right opposite you. There was no sexual offense court in Mitchell's Plain, so obviously you had to stand there and you had to look into their faces, or they come and throw a paper in the bin there right where you're sitting. And I just lost courage after a while. When it came to the day that we had to appear where they had to cross-question us, etc. I told the senior prosecutor, I can't go through with this. And at the time I wasn't working, and I also needed my kids' maintenance. And if he was going to go to jail, who was going to support us?
She says she has done her best to move on, but is disheartened that the alleged perpetrator has taken no responsibility for his actions.
It's the 4th year now, and I don't feel that hate anymore. I feel that you've done me an injustice, but your time will come when you will face what you did to me. He still denies it. He'll tell family members he's never done it. But I know and God knows that what happened that day.
All South Africans will have to stay at home.
As the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro or Municipality, we have about 5 venues to cater for the homeless.
Officials say approximately half of the 4,000 homeless people in the Cape Town CBD are already being accommodated in shelters.
You find about 8 people who are sleeping in there. The chances of them infecting everyone in there, they are very high.
I think we underestimated the numbers. At least now, the situation is firmly under control.
We're trying to keep our hands on the pulse for the homeless in the city as part of our President's call.
For many years in South Africa, spousal rape was not considered a crime by our courts, which implied that a husband was legally entitled to rape his wife. But in 1993, the Prevention of Family Violence Act criminalized rape and said that a husband may be convicted for the rape of his wife. South Africa was one of the first countries in Africa to criminalize marital rape.
We already have rape as being illegal, but in the history we used to have that one of the defenses a man could use when he was charged with rape or prosecuted, trying to be prosecuted with rape, is he could use the defense that the person was married to him. So those 2 acts deleted this defense entirely. So rape will cover marital rape, and then you will not be able to rely on these defenses anymore.
Despite developments in the law, attitudes in society haven't changed. Many men continue to insist that they have conjugal rights over their wives.
Many people think that marital rape isn't a real thing, and they would be that it's acknowledged in our law as a legitimate crime. So I think police, as being part of any community, are very likely to see it as a private issue between parties when it is as serious as a rape by a stranger on a street or a rape at a party, but it is part of this domestic violence realm, which is not seen as something, or not commonly seen as something that people want to intervene in.
Many women do not report the crime, thinking that spousal rape is difficult to prove. But experts said that the courts take a different approach on the requirements for evidence in rape cases.
Our legal system, like many legal systems, acknowledge that you can have evidence of one person versus another person. You just have to have a bit more caution when looking at the evidence of both. You don't have to have physical evidence, so your oral evidence is sufficient. And what the court really does is it tests whether your version of events is more likely than the other person's. So it really is looking at whether you're a credible witness or not.
Accurate statistics on this phenomenon are not available, but the protections in the law are what give survivors like Nomalizo the assurance to fight for recourse and advocate for other women still facing marital rape.
Bantu abangomama mabangahlali bafane nami banyamezele ubomi be-abuse, uyaqonda, kuba mna ndiye ndahlala kubo. Nangoku sendimane ndisiya ecourt akubikho mandi kuba yi-affect abantwana bam esikolweni.
If you are ashamed of going to report it to the police station, I strongly advise people to come to centers like Ilita Labantu to speak to a social worker or a counselor and you know, be ensured that whatever is discussed is confidential, but you need to know that what has happened to you is a crime and it needs to be reported.
But what needs to be done for the authorities to act on the law and ensure that victims are taken seriously?
Our law is already fine, but we don't have any implementation. So when you say to me, people going to the police and women who say they've been raped by their husbands and police not believing them, that needs to change. When we say that we want courts that are victim-centered, we need to make sure that all court personnel understand what that means. You really want to make it a system that reduces trauma at every single stage instead of increasing it, which is currently what we see.
Nomalizo says that though her battle is far from over, the impact on her family has proved to be more damaging.
Khumbulo lo umncinci una-11 ikhona into wayenzile, waye waxhuma wavula ifestire phaa ebhek efuna uzijula ngefestire. Yinto wayeyibonile isenziwa evule ifestire esithi mandizijule ngefestire. Uyaqonda ngelaa xesha ndandingayazi uba ndizawubalekela phi uba utixile izitixo zikuye igate ivaliwe.
Ndiluze i-confidence yam. I end up uba ndingumntu oselayo. Like I lost my mom for a moment ngenxa yalaa mntu. And ekhaya like we had dreams, big dreams, because I also had a business endlini. I called it Simba's Pizza because bensenzela abantu ipizza, yabo. Through mama wam ba encourage ba no, since off season ngoku besiphela ka film industry, since off season, why don't you do something? Yabo, so ke ndabe ngiqomba okay, I specialize ke kakhulu kwi pizza, and then I called my business Simba's Pizza, and then it just went boom because kaloku siya court sifuna lawyer.
With any child that is witness to that type of abuse that goes on in the home, it is bound to have negative effects on them. We not only look at the survivor as an individual, but we try to assist holistically. So if the survivor has any children, we make sure that they receive counseling as well.
Nomalizo says, as long as the alleged perpetrator has not been brought to book, she has to constantly look over his shoulder.
Akakagqibi ngam, uyayibona, noba uhlala kule ndawo ahlala kuyo ngoku, usayenza imigudu yento yokubana afuna uqonda uba kwenzeka ntoni ngobomi bam, ndihlala nabani, ndiyajola, ndenza ntoni phi, uyava. So yile nto ndisithi mna mntasekhaya andikabi nayo la happiness yokuthi hayi ndonwabile ngoku. Ndifuna ubona xa sekuthiwa uyabanjwa umthetho wenze indima yawo.